Hello, everyone. Very good afternoon to all of you. And thank you so much for taking your time out on a Saturday afternoon to join us on the book launch today. So today we are launching a book by Dato' Jeyaraj C. Rajarao, My Odyssey, Revolutionary and Evolutionary. So to put it in a nutshell, the book is an unusual biography, characteristic and reflective of the many dimensional attitudes of the author. It is the sincerest revelation of various experiences enjoyed and suffered through a life lived with passion and honesty, and as well as sporadically mixed with wittiness and mischief. Hard-hitting, impassioned, and critical, the author discusses extensively the political, socio-economic situations that affected and molded his thoughts and activities and commitment to social intricacies. To start off today's proceedings, please allow me to welcome Professor Dato' Dr. Zulfikar Yassin from Penang Institute to give a welcoming speech. Professor, stage yours.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the introduction. I am Zulfikar Yassin from the Penang Institute. I'll be moderating the session today, and perhaps I can go through a summary of the program this afternoon. Right. After this, there'll be some short speeches. Then there'll be a launching of the book, and then okay. Then a short photo session, followed by Q&A sessions where if you have any questions, they can be put to the panel up here. We are also live on Facebook for the many people who are joining us but are not able to be with us in this hall. So it is my great pleasure to call upon Dato' Rao, JC. JC, as I saw in the book, stands for many, many things. I think he will tell us a lot of the history of his journey from the early days to United Kingdom and back to Kuala Lumpur and finally now in Penang again. So we are really, really glad to have you here with us today, Dato'. So can I invite you on stage to give a short introduction? Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, the very fact that I'm not wearing a mask should indicate to you that I never have masked myself in any way. What I would like to tell you is, since it's given me a very limited time, is to thank, of course, Professor Zulfikar for agreeing, not knowing me at all, and I only met him, I think, about 10 minutes ago, to moderate this event. He, of course, is a very acclaimed marine biologist, and therefore he has dared to dive into my deep sea to discover what kind of a black shark this is, and whether I am docile or dangerous. Those of you who read through the book might realize I'm a combination of both. But basically, I'm a very naughty, witty, but very principled man of integrity. The third thing is, it's a great pity, I must apologize, that my very dear friend Dato' Sri Anwar Fazal is not here. He was suddenly summoned to deliver a very important lecture in Australia. And knowing me to be his good elderly brother, he said, "Excuse me, I got something more important to attend," and he left. But the creditable thing is, he ensured that his good wife, the motivator, the inspirationer, is here. So may I call his wife, Mahmuda, please stand up for all of us to thank you. Of course, the third person who's supposed to be here, I don't seem to recognize him. And that is Dr. Praveen Shah. Oh my God, you see, he's in hiding right behind. He is trying to confuse me. At my age, I still cannot be confused, although I am very contradictory in many ways. Having said that, then, I just quickly want to share with you my book. This is the first book that is being dedicated to my wife, and I can tell you, I could not have met a more beautiful, kind, loving, accommodating, patient. You can use any other positive adjectives to describe her. So, this book is for her, and therefore, it begins with a poem that I wrote for her. And of course, the first chapter is all about her. She left me for good hardly 2.5 years ago. I just want to recollect one interesting thing why I was attracted to her. She's as mischievous as me, sporting as me, quick with a repartee, full of mischief and so on. I remember when one of my books was being launched, one of the girls who came there told her, "Wow, your husband, very good man. We all fell in love with him and he was lecturing to us in history. Some of us wanted to marry him." And I recollect the distinct answer she gave. "Oh, I wish you did, and you would have saved me 60 years of problems." That is my mischievous wife. The book, of course, is very intensely personal, but my personal evolution, as it were, was decided by my early revolutionary days. Blunt, bold, sometimes bizarre, but always brazen and brave to confront anything that I thought was incorrect. It has brought me into a lot of problems, but it's a wonderful thing that my wife and my family stood by me. And one of the major defects then, after 20 years of not drinking, not smoking, I started drinking once I went to KL. And oh my God, I tell you, I must have consumed so much drinks which caused so many kind of unnecessary petty problems we used to gather and become big issues. So my friends, if any of you are in the habit of drinking, reduce it certainly. Now I've completely given it up. And for 20 years, I stopped drinking too in public. So that's it. And the third thing that I've tried to emphasize is in life, you can only truly succeed if you're honest to your own self. Pleasing your bosses and others for rewards, for promotions, for titles, it only gives you a temporary pleasure. But when you sit on your own and you reflect, you become more and more ashamed of yourself for compromising your principles. So, throughout my book, I'm saying be honest to yourself, search within yourself, and your conduct is much more important than your beliefs, which you do that. And that is why sometimes I talk about Sunday Christians, Friday Muslims, Tuesday Hindus, but every other day they are not what they pretend to be. With that brief uh, review of my book, I will take my seat because he has only given me 5 minutes. Otherwise, he will certainly decide I am dangerous and these marine biologists have got a skill of killing you. So I better take my seat. Thank you all, my very dear friends. And bless you all for coming and supporting this old man. Bye.
Thank you, Prof. Zul, and thank you, Dato Rao. So our next item on the agenda will be a message from Dato Rao's dear friend, Dato Sri Dr. Anwar Fazal. Just a short introduction of Dato Sri Anwar Fazal. He is the president of the Dr. Uliente Society. He is often described as a multiversity for his vast and diverse interests and activism for over half a century. He studied economics and education at the University of Malaya and later received an honorary doctorate in law and philosophy from both the University Kebangsaan Malaysia and University Sains Malaysia, respectively. Currently, he serves as a director of the Right Livelihood College, vice chairman of Sahabat Alam Malaysia, chairman of Think City, an urban rejuvenation venture, chairperson emeritus of the World Alliance of Breastfeeding Action, and a trustee of the Penang Free School. Ladies and gentlemen, can I direct your attention to the screens here for Dato Sri Anwar Fadal's message?
Professor Dato Zulfikar, Dato Jeyaraj Rajarao, brothers and sisters, welcome to this very special event in a very special place. Very special because we are involving someone who has a very rare legacy of 9 decades of experience with life in this country, all its trials and tribulations, its wonders, and someone who has gone through, you can say, hell and heaven in terms of the struggles that he had in terms of his life in doing what he felt was what was good for humanity and what was good for this country. We are also launching a book on his life, an amazing book and about an amazing life. His name, the one that I remember always him for, is Rajarao, the short name, and I usually like to remind him that you are so fortunate to have the word Raja in your name, which is a very high level. It's like you are a king and a sultan, and you are actually a highness of intellectualism, of also ability to debate and argue, and also to have a voice that is more thunderous than most people that I know. And so this, I think the name Raja is very appropriate. And the name Rao, of course, very often people remind me, Mr. Rao, oh, are you having a row with him? Because Rajarao enjoys debates, enjoys arguing about history, and so usually when you disagree or you have a debate, you tend to find the volume of the discussion going higher and higher all the time. But this is the joy, because in our country, the idea of having debates and the idea of having dialogues are things that have to go on, and we have to learn how to understand and also to listen very often to people who are like Rajarao, who have been rebels in their life in many parts of the world where they moved to. Yeah? I must also confess, I have that I have a relationship with him that goes to a long time. We both come from the Penang Free School, and my wife also comes from the same school. And my wife was, we shared the same headmaster and teacher, a very famous Welshman. And very often Welshmen are also well known because it was a country that was persecuted, to be very progressive in a way for thinking and listening to different arguments, because the Welsh had their issues with England and Scotland and Ireland in the place. And he was teaching my wife, and they both went through a certain trauma, very similar trauma in their life. She was refused entry to the school when she moved from Taipei to here, because the education department had written to say there's no place in the Penang Free School. So she cycled from her home down in town to Penang Free School. And when she was climbing the staircase, the headmaster, Mr. Hughes, was there. And the headmaster said, "What are you doing here, young woman?" And she said, I am looking for a place in this school. I come from the King Edward VII school. They told me the appropriate place is the Penang Free School here. And she said, the education department says there's no place. He said, who are you? Who are they to say that you have no place? You come here and start class tomorrow. And she did. And Rajarao had the similar experience. When he came back from UK, the whole story, which I will briefly mention later, he was what we call blacklisted. I don't like the color, because sometimes people say, hey, well, blacklisted. Blacklisted means you are marked down, for some notoriousness in there. And he was unable to get employment. When he saw his former geography teacher and now the headmaster said, I know, I have been informed, and you are, on a list that they are unable to employ you. But as the headmaster of the Penang Free School, I have the freedom to take on temporary teachers. And he took him on as a temporary teacher for 2-3 years. And that was a fantastic breakthrough for him. It also showed you how in this country, individuals can stand up for people who are victimized for various reasons. And he was loved. He was a great teacher. The students really loved him. He was excellent in terms of engaging them, excellent in terms of introducing them to a whole range of books, not the kind of traditional teacher, who would just stick to a syllabus. He was teaching general paper, for example, and my wife remembers, him so engaging, smiling, and talking, and also he was engaged in lots of other things in the school, in drama and literature, so that kind of engagement. And he got a possible job in the civil service. But this was the local civil service. He was fortunate because of his political inclinations that he has some friends. And they said there's a vacancy in the City Council of Georgetown. And the City Council of Georgetown was run by the Socialist Front. And the Socialist Front was a coalition between the Labour Party and the Parti Rakyat Malaysia. And he went for an interview and he got a position there as an assistant secretary, and he became a civil servant and really was an excellent civil servant. And I know that because that's where I joined him. And I too moved to the city council in 1965, and we were neighbors in terms of the office, and we worked together. He was very much engaged in the development of the Penang Library in his early years. Was something that was really very neglected. He transformed it into a hyperactive place, lighted the place up, and trained people. He engaged, and then he went on. After that, he got the local council itself. Elections were suspended. Local democracy was suspended, and the alliance at that time took over the city council. He thought at the time it was for him also to leave, and he had an offer to join the Rubber Research Institute in KL, where they wanted an editor. And he is an excellent writer. I mean, one of the most outstanding writers in Malaysia. His book has won a National Book Prize also. So he was very popular in terms of getting that. And that's been a lot of his life in writing. And that's why I think when he had to choose to do his own writing, he's also written it in an amazing kind of very personal way, very readable way, very honest way. He tells all his failings without any, worry. I mean, he has his regrets, and he said, people need to know that and some of the things I'm also ashamed of. And that kind of honesty is something also that is reflected. His own experience of why he was sort of being blacklisted and treated was because of his student days at the University of Malaya in Singapore. That time there was only one university in Malaya, and that was in Singapore. And he was active in the Fabian Society, which was a socialist, progressive society about how social systems should be operating. And the Singapore government, of course, didn't like that, because the Singapore government, the socialists were in the opposition in Singapore. So they made life a little bit difficult, but he got first class honors in Singapore. And Singapore was that time, that the University of Malaya was an outstanding university. World-class scholars were teaching, first class honors. And he got a scholarship to go to UK. And he went to UK, and went on to do his postgraduate. And the idea was that he would do his PhD there. But because he loved debating and challenging, and particularly you could say the colonial and imperialistic ideas of history, and also the way they want to continue those things and say how we liberated you, we educated you. When he said, but these people really oppressed us, and then all the stories, and he entered into big arguments with his professor, who then say, well, if you don't, like it, go. Well, and he just abandoned his scholarship and left UK and came back here to Malaysia. And when he came back here, Malaysia, of course, he thought, well, I'll come back home. But life here was complicated, and that's why he couldn't get a job. And then the Penang Free School headmaster was kind enough, a Welshman, was kind enough to assist him and set him up on his journey in he was also a very loving person. And this whole book tells you about a love story of himself and his wife, because very often you find people who are rebels, who are revolutionaries, persons whose family life also is very destructive. In this case, book is dedicated. He's written a poem about a very long poem, and he tells the whole story of how his wife Kamala was such a strength to him, such a joy to him. He was also a soldier during World War II, and joined the Indian National Army at age 14, the Chandra Bose group. So at age 14 also, he learned how to be a soldier. And during a time it was Japanese occupation, he speaks fluent Japanese. And he learned Japanese at that time and went to schools in Penang that time, that like Francis Light School was converted into a Japanese school. So very fluent in Japanese. So he had that very unusual global experience of even learning a whole new culture, Japan. And then also nationalism by joining the Indian National Army, which was basically fighting to liberate India from a colonial rule. Then, of course, when the war ended, everything became normal. The British came back, and he continued his own list. But because of his activeness in what was regarded as politically, uncomfortable in this country, when he came back to Malaysia too, 250 or so of his books were confiscated by the authorities. And I tell this because it gives you an indication of the kind of story that is in his book, and his sort of different kinds of battles against colonialism, against imperialism, and against persecution because of the freedom of thoughts that you might have, and I think that most outstanding quality of his honesty, his aggressiveness, his of course thunderous arguments, and all this are reflected. And he tells that story, and it's not a long story. It's not a short story. It's nearly 600 pages. And that's why it costs $100. Actually, it's very cheap if you calculate it by per page. So it's a book that really is so rare, so unusual, so much honesty, so much history of this country, and of a personality who went through every conceivable difficulty, at the same time did his very best for this country. So we are very grateful that he has come back here to Penang again for this book launch. You are a special legacy, Rajarao, and a treasure of stories. I wish you sort of every best in your next venture. I also want to thank the Penang Institute for hosting him again. His earlier book, which was also very revolutionary because it's a story of the rubber estate workers, and really the story of slavery again, and colonialism and all that, of that. And then that was about 4 years ago, and this book now I think is very, very special, and for Penang Institute also to give this kind of space for somebody who fought for freedom of thought, who fought against colonialism, imperialism, who was prepared to challenge, who debates and dialogue. I think is something that we are very grateful to Penang Institute to actually allow this this space. So I want to thank very much Prof. For moderating this particular session, and also to Dato' Wee, who was very kind and received a copy of this book earlier, and also the Penang Institute team, always very helpful, very special, very warm. Thank to Pichung and Alex and Lokman, Siu Hun, who is always helping us, even though she's from a distance. I want lastly also to thank Dr. P.P. Shah, a former president of the Malaysian Private Medical Practitioners Association, and my dear wife, Datin Sri Mamuda Bibi, who's also a student, as I mentioned, of Dr. Shah, for agreeing to unveil the book today. Thank you so much, both of you. So thank you very much. Do buy the book and have a good discussion, have a good debate, and also some rows of disagreement if you like. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dato' Sri Dr. Anwar Fazal. I'm sure we actually really enjoyed his rather entertaining words. So now we have arrived at the unveiling and the launch of Dato' Rao's book. So if I may invite Dato' Rao to be on stage with Dr. P.P. Shah, as well as Prof. Zul and Datin Sri Mamuda Bibi. On the stage, please. Thank you to our honored guests for unveiling and launching the book. So ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at probably maybe one of the most anticipated portions of today's session, which will be panel discussion as well as Q&A with Dato' Rao and Prof. Zul. So may I just give a short introduction of our moderator today? Professor Dato' Dr. Zulfikar Yassin is a marine environmental ecologist and is currently an honorable professor at University Science Malaysia. He was involved with the establishment of many of Malaysia's marine parks. He led the country's marine expedition to Antarctica and subsequently headed various national expeditions cataloging the marine biodiversity in the region. Born in Penang and always passionate about the sea, he subsequently studied in the UK, where he took up scuba diving. He later became one of the country's earliest diving instructors. Over the years, his research has led him to work in many distant locations, including the Galapagos, Namibia, the Seychelles, the Amazon, Tasmania, Komodo, California, Japan, Suzhou, and as well as South India. May I invite Professor Dr. Zulfikar and Dr. Rao to be on the stage, please.
Thank you, first of all, to the Penang Institute for hosting this session. I'm actually very privileged to be here and reading your book. 600 pages of them didn't take a long time, actually, because it's a page-turning book, and looking at what you went through in those years, I think there are many lessons to be learned there. I think it is also a record of what not only you went through, I think what the country went through, all the good and the bad of the country. So in some of the one of the things that was said about the book was that and about you, as he accounts his life story, and it is evident that he has lived a life with passion, integrity, wit, and mischief. That was written there. A life of black and white with very little gray in it. So I think this is something that perhaps a lesson to many, especially to the young here. May I start with a question to you? Recounting all those years in Penang and also overseas, as well as your work in the Rubber Research Institute. If you could choose a turning point in your life that make you decide to go where you want to be now, what would that be, you think?
I have been thinking about that, particularly since my wife passed away. What do I want to be? Actually, excuse me, however funny I may be and loud and serious or argumentative, as Anwar was mentioning, I'm still basically a very emotional and sentimental person. So when that question is asked, and as I mentioned, with my wife's departure, what I would like to be now is just simple, take care of my health, keep myself happy, be of use to my society, extent I can, take care of my pet dog, and be thankful, which I always am now, for all the many blessings that I have and was having, not just for my family, but friends like you. If I were to narrate some stories, you would cry with me, because some of them I hear who come all the way from KL. Just let me give you one incident. You know, when I was down and out and I had to go for my vaccinations, a friend whom I'd hardly met for 2 years came to my house as early as 7, took me in his car miles away from Malawati to Kapong, made sure I went through each one of the 6 spots. I got vaccinated. He made sure I got into his car and brought me back home. He's here today with his wife and his youngest child, Charles. So you see how blessed I am. I can give you many narratives, not just an Indian or a Roman Catholic against an atheist. So many Malay friends of mine. I just can rattle off the names. Chinese friends of mine. And I think all that blessing comes because although I was rough and tough, and I'm very sorry for that, because I wanted to carry across my views and I wanted to do it quickly and positively. So I was loud, quick, and even imposing. All that is not necessary. Smile, be gentle, be patient, and they will be even more patient to listen to you. So that is what I want to be, a simple, ordinary person, just live my life as best as I can, be of service to whomever I can. But I will continue to be critical about the corrupt leaders that we have. And I will do them down in the worst possible way. That one I will never compromise.
Thank you, Dato. I think perhaps I can start with some questions from the floor, also from Facebook Live. Does anybody want to start with a question this afternoon? If not, can I go? Oh, sure, sure. Right, please.
You enjoy debating. It's on, is it? Yeah. Who would you consider your most formidable opponent in the debate?
Sorry? You love debating.
Yes.
Who would you consider your most formidable opponent?
Very interesting question. Let me be brutally honest. I had no real opponents, but the one who came nearest to that was my dearest wife. You see, in life, when you tread an honest path and you're bold enough to express it, however serious the dispute might be, I've given you a few incidents, a few examples in my book. Eventually, the other person will realize that you are not really a combative person because they realize your inner worth, your inner integrity. That is why while we talk, there's no famine for words. All of us believe in something or other. That is why, as I mentioned, in my book, it is not important that we believe, firmly and strongly on a Sunday or on a Friday or on a Tuesday in temples or in churches or mass. Your belief is only secondary to your conduct. We are all human beings, mind you. This concept of race, Chinese, Indian, Malay, is all ridiculous because scientifically, as far as I understand, there is no such thing as a race. There's only one race, if I may call it, human beings. And we are no different from one another except in our thoughts and in our actions. There is no two individual who can think alike and act alike. So you must have that immense patience to try and understand. And quickly, I want to emphasize one thing. Cherish your mother. Cherish your wife. I have myself witnessed through my own deeds how, a man can be somewhat callous. But the mother, if not for her, we won't be alive. Your wife, mother of your children. caring for them, sending them to school, taking care of the home. We don't seem to recognize that. We think just because we go to office in the morning and come back, after the day's work, we have done much. Today, the housewife not only works as hard outside to earn money, and some of them earn even much more than their husbands, but they come back, they have that full responsibility: husband, children, homes. So pause about that. Let that love be perpetual. Cherish them. Gender equality is only in the outside, but the gender supremacy is at home. That's the wife.
Yeah. Any more questions from the floor? I'll come to FB Live in a while. Right. Still thinking about. I think some of you have read the book, and there are perhaps some things that you want to be elaborated. But for those of you who have not got the book, I would recommend you to get it up front here. It is very good reading. I find it very illuminating, especially for the Malaysian community. I have a question to you, somewhat specific. You work with the Rubber Research Institute, and I'm very sure there has been many issues with the workers in the Rubber Research Institute, especially with their well-being and welfare, and I think it takes a very humane approach to look at these problems from that perspective. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience there?
Mine is, of course, affirmed and strengthened by the many books that I have read. There are many PhD books written on the workers in rubber estates, the laborers. But mine is also enriched by my experiences. And the simple fact is, these people, mostly the Indians in fact, are brought from India to work. And they think because they are being paid a little more than what they were getting in India, some of them not working at all, that the owners of the rubber estates, and they were mostly the government, the British government, and of course the rich British people who were controlling them and exploiting them. That's a sad thing. The Chinese were facilitated. And don't you ever think they were much kinder? They paid their workers, the Chinese workers, much more, but they equally ill-treated them. I have actually written 2 basic books on the rubber industry, one on the Mardek, the biggest, and the other one on the first. And there I've talked about all how they brought these people, how they treated them, how they grew. So my simple thing is, yes, make money, make your profits. It's necessary if you want to live. But don't do it entirely at the cost of the human labor whom you enslave to work from morning till night and give them hardly anything. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that. I am, of course, a little opposed to capitalism because the capitalists, they just want to make money and money at the expense of the laborers. And there is any number of books on them written from, I tell you, from the 18th, 19th century, any number of books. I've quoted Marx there to show about this thing. But I can tell you, I've seen this very close. I won't give you the names. Seen this. They get the workers from the rubber estates. They take care of their homes. They are not even allowed to sit at the table and eat. Sit on the floor with their little plate, just black coffee, can't even give them milk. Restrict them to 2 slices of bread. This is the way you treat a human being. My house, just tell the lady, eat whatever you like, whenever, but don't. Work is work. That's it. And I know some of these people who did that. Oh, will go to church on Sundays, will propagate, believe. This is the way they treat. Some poor young girl, maybe of 14, 15 years old, from a faraway rubber estate. That is sad. So let us all love and care in every possible way. Treat them as a human being, and you see what the response, what the affection comes back. Some of my friends have witnessed it. They think, charity must begin at home, standard phrase. Now, when you do charity, you don't think of any rewards. It will come sometime or other, sometime. And I tell you, I'm so richly blessed. And I can't understand how I can be so richly blessed when I was certainly no perfect person. Although I thought myself to be very brilliant, clever, no, none of us is perfect. Just remember that. If you're humble, kind, and you work hard, there must be sincerity and integrity. Although despite age, there, Dr. Jeyaraj is there. You know his brother. I know exactly because of politics and racism, how his elder brother, who started the medical faculty, was kind of asked to leave. He in charge of hospice after so many years of retired, and yet the two of us, quite old, were able to stand in Merdeka Square to protest against injustice in the country. So we can. Don't say no, cannot, cannot. No, no, cannot, cannot. It doesn't matter age. For honesty, go out. Be brave. Be blessed.
Thank you.
That is the answer to my question.
Are there any questions from Facebook Live? Yes, please.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, Mr. Rajarao. Knowing that you wrote
You have
the
to.
book of the first profits fund in Malaysia, I'm interested in your opinion about the government's recent decision to allow people to withdraw 10,000 ringgit from their ETF accounts. I was wondering if you have any opinions on that.
Would you comment on the government's recent permission to withdraw 10,000 ringgit from the EPF? What do you think about that?
Well, this is an instant thought. I would like to think the whole objective of the EPF is for everybody who earns to save a little each month so that when they retire, they can be cared for through their own savings. Now, if you allow them to withdraw at any time a large sum of money, what is going to happen to them when they're old, when they're eligible to get the funds? That $10,000 that you take now is worth nothing tomorrow or day after tomorrow. What are they going to do when they retire and they even have the 10,000? Nothing. So they must have ample amount of money. I know in Singapore government, when they were eligible, mind you, at that time I think 55, they could withdraw their pension, and then they extended their working years by another 5 to 60 or 65, I'm not so sure. They said they cannot withdraw their EPF. Why? course, they're earning, save, and then when you retire and you get a lump sum gratuity and then a regular pension, you will be better off. So that's it. Do you know my boss, with whom I had open and private quarrels and disagreements, insisted that I should be put on a pension. I wanted to get the whole gratuity or whatever word you call it, take all the money and go and invest in buy a house and so forth. He says, no, I've seen you. You are going on pension. You take a lot of the money, you're going to squander it within the next 2-3 years. And I tell you, although he didn't gone, I'm eternally grateful to him for making that wise decision. So at least now every month I can get $3,000, and that's ample for me. So I don't think, getting the money here and taking out your hard work savings is going to benefit you. Wait for your time. While you're still young, you can go and do some other work and earn, although you may have been retired. But when you retire, you're happy you have some regular income, or you have enough money to take care of yourself. And I don't know, those of you who are parents, possibly even grandparents, today the children are different. They are more anxious to put you in old folks' home and say, manage. They don't care. I have hinted at this in my book, but I tell you, over the last 20 years, I was a little more patient because of my wife's persuasion. We are all beginning to come together now. And that's largely because not that we have different ideas, I just don't reply. Because once you start speaking, there's no famine for words. You want to go and argue, you want to go and explain, and just introduces problems. So it's best to keep quiet. So I don't think I'm in favor of allowing anybody to withdraw from their savings like that, from the EPM.
Thank you. On that, keeping silent and listening and evaluating, I wish my wife was here this afternoon. So I'm sure she's on Facebook. So we'll be talking about this.
Glad.
Looking at the present Malaysian generation, many things that they are enjoying a much more luxurious life. It's easy compared to what the older generations went through, and this perhaps is not such a good thing in their tenacity to be able to compete or survive. What do you think about this?
I tell you, my first reply to that is, let us not imagine that the young generation are irresponsible or negligent or unconcerned. They live a much tougher life than we lived. When we were young, what was our problem? We didn't have big televisions or hand phones. We just ran across, climbed up trees, plucked some rambutans or whatever, some fish. We had no such worries. Today, they are exposed to the whole global thing. And then there's a new system which is imposing. Well, they can get 2 A's, why are you only getting 1 A? It is forced from young. And what is that? No, you have got to study to earn money, to live comfortably and own a big car. In our days, this wasn't that. So first, please understand the young generation. And I tell you, what they study today is so much higher in value and superior in knowledge and more difficult in techniques than what we did, certainly what I did. I know, I've got grandchildren, I've seen them. I can't understand them. Can't even understand. Of course, my memory is lost a lot of things, but still, I tell you the difficulty. And then the sense of independence is already imposed. by the parents. Father goes to work, mother goes to work. You have some maid looking after them, who God alone knows, what she is doing to the children. So they are coming through another whole atmosphere, another whole new set. So you have got to spend time with them, and that can also be built, not just in the house, it must be in the school. Our school system, I'm sorry to say, is most disappointing. Most disappointing. Kindergarten, primary schools, secondary schools. Those of you who have been teachers, or those of you who have sent your children, I tell you, if you go through the syllabus, the hours spent on various, what I would think is extraneous subject, is not only shameful, but in some of those areas, what they teach the children. If I were to give you a realistic example, you all will imagine that I'm being biased against a particular religion or a particular group of people. No, I've experienced this. I can tell you this because I've experienced this. So have patience. Through love and tenderness, you can modulate them, modify them, and inspire them. That's all I can say to you.
Thank you, Dato. As a sideline, one of the things that Penang Institute does is to look at issues in Penang. One of the most recent issues that we are looking at is the rising numbers of suicides in Penang. Penang suicide cases, especially off the Penang Bridge, is rising quite sharply. The sad thing about it is that these are, as what you mentioned, not old people. They are people who are working and even school, at the school age. So that pressure on them, for the older ones, is usually financial pressure, especially now. So if we trace back, that's one of the reasons. But for school leavers, that's sad that it has pushed them not getting X number of A's in school is such a depressing thing that pushes them over the edge to do this. And one of the reasons is, apart from that, is having had that pressure and not knowing where to go and who to talk to relieve this. You have lived such a rich life, and there has been many obstacles, and you have overcome them. I'm sure it's not easy. So perhaps some of that lesson can be imparted to this young of the Malaysian community, and make them think of a broader perspective to life rather than some narrow narrative that is giving them a lot of pressure.
Let me quickly confess, I am no expert in giving you even a reasonably good answer. There are eminent doctors here. Maybe Dr. Jeyaraj can, give an answer to that. How do you solve that kind of a problem?
Doctor, do you want to respond to this?
And he does a lot of work to help this kind of thing.
We do need a lot of work, and I think perhaps we should discuss many of those issues more openly, especially in schools. Because you being a school teacher,
No, but that's going to be extremely difficult, because I tell you, I've tried and got myself into worse and worse problems. Although they set up committees, when my second granddaughter was insisting on doing science, the best results, they'd say no. And they give others worse results the opportunity to do science. Question, and there I was leading my daughter to question, how can she must be there? No. They straight away took away her prefectship. Oh my God, I've written about all those things there. It's terrible because it is too race-based, too religion-based. That is the greatest fault of our country. Therefore, I'm sorry to say, the country is doomed. It's getting worse and worse. You just see Mahathir, supposed to be a very clever, intelligent man. What is the new party that he's starting just for the Malays and for the Muslims? They are human beings. I got angry with Tun Razak when he introduced the NEP based on race. Oh no, people like my dear friend Raymond, all very happy. I said, no. Why do you base it on the economics? People who are earning less than whatever it is or got no home will give them. But the majority would be Malays. But the moment you put, Malays, naturally the Chinese, Indians, I am so poor, I am not getting anything. So you're causing problems. Let us just do it on an economic base, on a health-based system. Not, Malays, Chinese, Indians. Whew. It's very dangerous and our country going down. I'm sorry to say that. Very sorry. And I say it very miserably and ashamedly.
Thank you, Dato'. Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Prof, for letting the MC ask a question. So I'm also in the midst of reading Dato' Rao's book, and definitely his many adventures, actually, I agree with Prof, so it's very, very illuminating. So my question to Dato' Rao is, what would you consider to be your greatest adventure?
What
Going
would be?
through the book,
Yes.
what would you consider to be your greatest adventure?
My greatest adventure. I know. I've had many adventures. I cannot think of my greatest. I think finally was my greatest adventure through experiences. I began very quickly in the last 20 years to realize my many own weaknesses. And I'm honestly ashamed of them. And because I'm ashamed of them and I'm honest, I ask for forgiveness from anybody whom I have hurt. Because the first thing, my adventure is I've gone through life, have no anger, have no hate. Learn to be patient. Take it upon yourself. Your failures are actually caused not by others. Don't blame others, yourself. So my adventure through that, and now my, as it were, measure of peace, is looking into myself and proudly accepting I was never near to perfectness even. I regret my brazenness, my egotism, my so many other qualities. But I'm a very happy man now. And quickly I want to say, we just see this place, of course, no doubt, with Anwar Fazal's help, for free. My friend there, Pat Chong, has printed my book at his own expense. He was imprisoned 8 years for being a leftist. Look at the way he has come out to help me. Publishing a book is not cheap. But there you are, I have got so many friends who are helping me happily. So you see how goodness, honesty returns to you. Take my friend Praveen Fa, hardly meet him. But he's now taking care of my sister, who's in an old folks home. He doesn't charge me a cent. Just drives there whenever he wants, sees, but quickly will tell you, don't worry about your sister. She's this. Happy. So many of you here. That gentleman there, next to him, Praveen Prasad. So many. Almost, and I do not know all of you. Oh, take Rubin McInshaw. When I was in Hans Crescent, this young boy, when I used to try and, inspire the young Malaysian students of how to work and to build themselves, all that. They all loved me so much when I left. He gave me one book. He was just a student. Now, of course, he's a very established lawyer. I can quote so many of these examples. If you're good, they will be better. If you're kind, they'll be kinder. So that is the adventure. You've got to go realize your mistakes and correct them. That's it.
Thank you, Datu. Any questions again? Anyone who wants to add something from the floor? Sure.
Thank you very much, Dato. Very entertaining and very meaningful insights you have shared with us. The world seems to be aflame today, literally as well as metaphorically. The West seems to be in terminal stage with a lot of problems, a lot of decay, morally, politically, economically, intellectually even. What ails the West? Is it neo-colonialism? Is it Western domination? Is it ideological straitjacketing? Is it lack of resilience that is impelling them to have a clash with more resilient countries in developing world and with China? Your opinion, sir.
That seems to be a short question, which demands a massive and long, careful reply. I tell you, as I mentioned to you, today my interest is to looking after my health, being happy and being of use to those who are close to me. These are questions which are debated at the highest levels by the cleverest of individuals. And there are as many as individual views as there are the debates. My view is simple. They have just ceased to be human beings. Human beings have ceased to be humans. They're selfish. Hegemony. The United States of America, once, we all used to applaud her. Today, look at it. Their vision. All kinds of problems. China. And no nation is absolutely innocent. And like individuals, no nation is perfect. So what is it? What do we do? The question is, let's just mind our own business, take care of our country. The less, as I said, don't blame others, look into ourselves. The more each nation looks into their own selves and tries to be productive, progressive, profitable, the better it would be. Don't try and tell, you are doing this, you are doing that. You look, I'm sure many of you have been to the United States. You know how many Black Americans sleep in the railway station, sometimes by the roadside? Even in Britain. What are they talking about? So these are very difficult questions to ask. It's the way you want to analyze it. And my own analysis is, A, despite declaring themselves, I've written almost a whole paragraph, Christian nation, going about conquering nations, the way they bully them. I've given particular examples in history. Britain, God save the Queen, Charge, Mughals, all this. No. We cannot do. I'm not a politician to start with. I am certainly no political leader of any kind. I am just a human being, and I tell you one thing, as has happened now in Sri Lanka, you see, the people finally came together. The power is really in the hands of the people. And you see how they not only quickly had the prime minister retired, but the president too. And that's a strange thing, I'm telling you. Kindness. How is it Singapore, such a strict, solid country? I don't know whether they have given him permanent asylum or just it for a restricted 1 week. Because when you do this, as they've done this to many European countries, have done this to African leaders who exploited the people, killed them mercilessly, are having asylums in their country. No, you should just put them in prison. Why? And they say, they're democratic, they're honest, and they're caring, and yet they're giving the best of treatment and facilities for these robbers. Why? Cannot. So that's my view. That Singh friend of mine is the youngest son of Mr. Tagar Singh, who taught me geography long, long ago in Penang Free School. Two brothers. And he has come here. Why? Because he likes me. Why? I don't really know. But I think in the school when I was a teacher, I tell people, learn to like one another, be of help to one another. My headmaster at that time, and the Chinese gentleman, I think his name was Tan Bun Lin, was angry with me. Because in the sixth form, when I was form teacher, I didn't want chassis. I wanted it curved, and I said, no two girls should sit together, no two boys should sit together. If you don't know how to sit one next to the other and behave yourself, what are you going to do when you get to the university? I said, when I come into the class, you don't have to stand up and say, good morning, sir. I'm as good as your friend. I'm learning as much from you all. So all these things, but of course the headmaster didn't like it. And those students still brothers and sisters. That's all I tell them. Brothers and sisters.
Thank you, Dato'. Yes.
Dr. Rajarao.
Can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? All right. Okay. Living 90 years, 9 decades, and we all pray that you will have good health, all right, passing through the 100 mark, 100 years at least, all right, for the next 10 years, all right. If there is an opportunity to turn the clock back, there's an opportunity to turn the clock back, all right. How different would you have lived your life? Or what significant contribution that you could have made in the last 9 decades? Thank you.
Last 90 years?
Yes.
I mentioned, yes, I've mentioned clearly all the things that I regret having done. I'm not very clear about that question. What I regret, is it?
No, the question is, if you have lived your life all over again,
Yes.
what significant changes that you would have done in your life, or whether there could be any difference that you would have lived your life?
Of course. If I knew 90 years, of course, this is speculation. And the very fact is, we human beings still dream and still hope. I can't recognize. Oh, then that's that. Anyhow. So, my next 90 years, how I want to live?
If you turn the clock back last 90 years,
Oh, yes. I will tell you, I would not have started drinking and smoking. That's the first thing. 2, I would not have been so emphatic or imposing my thoughts on others. I would gently share, yes. 3rd, I would have started an NGO or something to gather people of my thoughts, and there are lots of people like that, and quietly propagate these ideas of loving one another, respecting one another, and diminishing the differences which are now being emphasized and perpetuated to cause further and further division amongst us. That's 3, 4 things. And they are all very difficult, I tell you, to achieve. It took me some time before I could give up drinking. I'm yet to give up smoking. But I've given up smoking, but I'm still puffing. You see, I can make all kinds of excuses for myself. So I'm still not yet absolutely honest to myself, you know. But next year I'll give it up. I got discipline. I can be quite stubborn. Yes.
Any
Yes,
more? Yes,
but for
please.
20 years, you know, with my wife persuading me, I told her I won't drink in front of her children, grandchildren, and even during the weddings, the drinks were flowing freely. I didn't drink. I didn't drink. And my wife told me, mind you, mischievously, I never told you not to drink. I only told you don't drink too much. Here, your own granddaughters, why don't you have a toast of a wine with them? I said, when I say I won't drink, I won't drink. That's it. So life can be funny, happy, and sad. But the thing is, when you had a mischievous wife like as I had, a loving wife as I had, accommodating wife, life can always be very pleasant. There are some here who have experienced meeting my wife. And when the two of them get together, I get bashed up and powdered. Yes, because they all liked her so much. Such a lovely lady. Let me give you another example. Mamuda's husband, my very dear buddy, I call him brother. He'll go down walking along the Penang Road streets and all that. He'll go and buy a small thing. This is for Kamala. I don't know whether you remember that small tiffin carrier and all that. You know, they think of her. That's how precious my wife has been, not just to me, to all my friends. In fact, a lot of people liked me or tolerated me because they liked my wife. It's a fact. You can ask Dr. Prashad there, knowners from little, but he lied one thing. But then lawyers all tend to lie, I'm told. You know, when I was courting my wife, his auntie, his mother's sister, in the house, I will go in the evenings and nobody could feed him. He was hardly 2 or 3 years old, I think. So I come, I tell him stories, crack jokes about the sky and the moon, stars, and feed him. He eats. You know what he told me? When he became much, much older, I put it in the book because I record facts. He told me he didn't want to eat from anybody. He only wanted to eat from me so that I will come there every night to see Kamala. Look at that. How the brain was working even then. Yeah. And it was his mother who actually took care of my mother. Because her mother passed away very young, when she was hardly 9 or 10, I think. So it was that sister.
Doctor,
It was very interesting listening to you. I felt that one old timer talking to another old timer, and many of the ideas that you expressed that have influence in your life are similar to what I've been through. But what I would like to ask you, Dato, is from where did you get your values? You're driven by values. From where did you get it?
They've had different sources. My first source was from my mother, who, when she used to take care of the plants and all that, would say, when you take care of them, you see how they nourish, how they grow, and so on. And then in between, she will always say, God is always there. God is always there. And necessarily being a Christian, it is always Jesus Christ. So I was inspired by that. And going to Sunday school, church, I got my values from my church, from my priest. not at all ashamed to confess it. I have mentioned it in my book. And then, of course, I myself became very absorbed in it. So I learned many beautiful lessons, especially from Christ's life, from the Bible. So from that. But then as I grew up, I was reading more and more books. I was getting a lot of splendid ideas, thoughts, provoking my mind right from Socrates' time, Aristotle, Plato, and so forth. And then much later, I was already in my 15, 16, I was reading the contemporary people, Gandhi Ji. So I got a lot of, values from them. Non-violence, satyagraha, good living, caring. Gandhi Ji cared for all religion, although he was a staunch Hindu. He admired Tolstoy so much. Christian too. Tolstoy finally became a Christian and he was talking about God. So I had a very strong belief in this supreme person who's in control of everything. Now, much later, I was beginning to read a lot of scientific books. Then the questions were raised. Is there truly a God? Or did we really evolve? Is there a creator? What is the purpose of religion? Isn't religion man-made? How many sects, not sects, cults there are in each religion? How can that be? They're all man-made. And yet, when you read all these holy books, it tells you very clearly the kingdom as a Christian of God is within you, not outside, not in temple. Tagore has written a beautiful poem about these things. Where? The Islamic religion, they say Islam, if you are true to it, is your jugular vein. Cut it and you're finished. So, Allah is within you, not in the mosque. Go and ask the Hindus. You know how many gods and goddesses they identify today in India? 380 million. Everything is a god or a goddess. And yet, the Holy Scripture says, Tat tavam savi, that thou art. So this is why I learned to discard all that. Look into yourself. Look into yourself. Accept everybody. Respect everybody for whatever their view is. If you want the right to think of your own things, if you have the right to act in your own way, you must necessarily give the same right to the others. So from that point of view, one of the values that I've learned is don't impose your values on your thoughts on anybody. Conduct. When they see your conduct, goodness, they will want to imitate you. They'll want to follow you. So the values that I have enriched myself with this from many sources. First, of course, unashamedly, mother and the Christian faith. I still accept a lot from the Christian faith. I accept the best and reject the worst of any religion for that matter. But I am so familiar with Christianity. I was the first Anglican president of the Anglican church here. I was a servant in the church carrying the cross. Oh, I was the only non-Chinese admitted to the Chinese Anglican fellowship and elected as president. All this when I was 15, 16, 17, young. So it was my faith. But today, scientifically, what is faith? Today, I want empirical evidence, scientific facts, not faith. Because faith is just blind faith. There's no reason. And yet I've got very many close friends with all the different religious people. Because I don't argue anymore. If they talk, yes. I don't introduce, don't question. Some people believe you are a great Muslim if you just wear your tudung or you wear a small little beard here. Some others believe they're great Christians if they hang a cross here. No, didn't do this long. In this country, many other countries, look at my professor friend. He's a Muslim. He's clean shaven. Does this make him less a Muslim? Ridiculous. I don't wear any cross here when I was young, never wore. That didn't make me less a Christian. So think about all these things. Live your own life honestly. This above all to thine own self be true, and thou canst be false to any other man. Shakespeare said that. I quoted it wrong.
Well said, Dato'. Can we have any more questions from the floor?
Sure.
My friend Jeyaraj, I am 4 years younger to you. Right? And I wanted to ask you, of course, I've known you for a long time, and sometimes we missed each other, but having heard you here is the longest time that I've sat with you. Hearing your intelligence, your thoughts, your work habits, and what you went through. After having said all that, do you consider that you are a happy man?
I have what?
You are happy.
Are you a happy
Do
man?
you consider you a happy man?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I'm happy. But only one thing, it happens now and then, especially when I listen to classical music. Memories of my wife come to my mind. At that time, it is not that I'm desperately sad. I'm sad not because she's not around with me. I'm sad because sometimes I've been rough and tough with her. That is all. Otherwise, I'm one of the happiest persons today. I always say, almost everybody, you can ask whoever sees me, I'm blessed. I'm grateful. I'm thankful for the life that I'm enjoying. At my age, I tell you, I can stand up still, I can walk. But now, of course, health-wise, doctors will tell you, blind in this eye, getting worse in this eye, frozen arm. I tell my wife when I tell her frozen arm, yeah, frozen arm. Say, no, because I'm not exercising, drinking my beer. This is the way we banter and we keep our lives, happy. It's not seriousness. We are friends, after some time, husband, wife are friends. Laugh, be happy. So that's it. I'm very happy. And this gentleman, now that I mentioned it, he says he remembered me in school. I didn't remember him. Not that I didn't know you or whatever, but I just didn't know you. But at the university, brilliant student, humble, kind, helpful. He would take me, this rough, tough fellow. I was a very mischievous fellow in the university, to his auntie's house, first class, vegetarian food. Till today, I can taste the pickle I used to have there. Do you remember those good old days? How? Why did he take me to his house? I was one of the naughtiest fellows in the university. There you are. You see how blessed I am? How happy I am? So you are happy. I am really happy. Nothing else. I mean, for my own self, I'm absolutely happy and think my children are doing well, my grandchildren are all. Every day we talk, they like. I'm still joking with them. Although they say same old jokes, Tata. So I'm very happy.
Would you say that happiness comes from within? Within you, the happiness comes
Yes.
from within you.
Yes.
Not anybody can give you that.
No. Happiness comes from within. You create your happiness. You cease to grumble, you cease to criticize others, blame others for your so-called, lack of this and lack of that. Your happiness is created from within. And one way of creating happiness is to make others happy. Then your joy is double. Because happiness, you create it, you must share it. All good things you must share. Yes.
Thank
Sorry.
you, Dato'. Any more questions from the floor? Any from Facebook? No. No. Thank you. Perhaps I can ask you one last question.
You can.
It's okay. This 90 years,
Yes.
almost, has it come quickly?
I never thought about that. Quite honestly, I never thought about that. You know, age is something that goes on. Sometimes, yes, time is moving very slowly. Sometimes time has just passed by. Yes, that I still have. You know, when I'm doing something intensely, my God, time has passed by. When I have nothing to do, listen, oh, I'm so happy. Slowly time is moving. I'm living long.
Thank you. So illuminating. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big hand to Dato' Rao for being with us here today. Thank you.
My dear friends, I'm entirely grateful to each one of you for your presence, for your support. All I would ask you, if you could, which I'm sure you would, be happy. Just be happy. Don't grumble. Don't blame. Be happy with whatever you have. Be contented. When you are trying to get a little angry or a little envious, think of the millions of people who can't even get one meal a day, my friend. When you think of those kind of people, your life is heavenly already. And you'll be thankful, always thankful. Bless you all. Bless you all.
Thank you
Dato',
so
it has been a privilege. Thank you. Back to the MC. Yes.
Thank you, Dato' Rao. Thank you, Prof. Zul. I think that's a very interesting session that all of us enjoyed. And thank you, everyone, so much for being here with us today. So we have arrived at the end of our book launch and our event. And as you can see, Dato' Rao's book is on sale over there with a number of other titles from Gerak Budaya. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening and a great weekend ahead.
Do you mind if I take a photo of both of you? Maybe just standing. 3, 2, 1. All right.